UFC Fight Night between Tatsuro Taira and Alex Perez takes place tomorrow night at the Apex. I'm going to be going through every single fight on the card, giving you guys my detailed picks and predictions. But first of all, I just wanted to recap. Before I recap, I suppose, wanted to apologize. I was not able to make it a video to cover the card, either a picks video or a betting, video for the card. I had a bachelor party with some buddies and was out of town and wanted to make it work. But so, starting it off with 2 weeks of events and only doing one video kind of is shitty, but looking to be more consistent here. So this recap is going to be for not the previous fight night between Cannonier and Imavov, but the UFC 302 between Poirier and Makhachev. And I won't be going through all of the fights, but just want to do an overall recap. 10-2 on the card, lots of solid picks. I thought Phil Rowe was a good pick, and in the third round, if he had locked in a little bit and decided to not give up bottom position trying to take the back, could be looking at 11-1. And I was just completely off with the Morono and Nico Price fight. I guess what we found out is that Nico Price, what did we really find out about Nico Price? Like he came and did what you would expect, I suppose. What we really found out was that Alex Morono, maybe he suffered an injury. I don't know, but he looked. If that same fighter fought Buckley, a couple of cards ago, he would have got knocked dead. He would have been knocked dead. So anyway, 10-2, I'll take it. I'm rocking with the current percentage of 83.33%. So we're looking to keep that up here. But let me jump into the first fight between Josephine Knudsen and Julia Palastri. Now, what do I know about Julia Palastri? Well, not a lot. We don't really have a lot to go off of. She, won her Contender Series fight. I'm really going to be honest with you. I'm not looking at like female fights on the regional scene. I'm most likely, if I'm going to see these fighters, if I start hearing like an exciting prospect, like Paddy Pimblett, for instance, when he was back in Cage Warriors, I would get up for that. But some of these fighters in the regional scene, like if I didn't already know of them, they don't come onto my radar until now. And it's like she lost to Jasmine Jasudavicius in her Contender Series bout back in 2021. That's forgivable loss. Jasudavicius has had a good run, and then she's finished 3 of her last 4 wins, which is impressive, but like against who? Against 7-11 Bianca Saddlemeyer. 6-0 Brenda Goddage, right? But these are not proven tests, and I don't have a massive sample size to go off of for Knudsen, but I would say that she looked very solid in her fight against Marnik Mann. She looked very solid. She looked composed. She looked like her strikes were actually damaging Mann, and her grappling looks very high level. And when you look at, again, it's like, okay, she maybe lost a few kickboxing fights earlier in her career. Other than that, she's undefeated. And yeah, I just have the Mann fight to go off of, but like she looked like a man in that fight. So I'm going to go with Josephine Knudsen to get it done, and most likely by decision. But again, we're just tracking the overall, we're just tracking the picks here, not necessarily going to be doing, because it's going to get tricky tracking the buy methods. So give me Knudsen by decision. Moving on. We have Shailin Nerdembeka versus Mezcal Costa. So I'm leaning Costa here because I feel like Nerdembeka, like, first of all, right, his record So I'm to believe that he's 30 years old and that he's had 50 pro fights. That's insane. He's on the Chinese regional scene though, so it's like, is he just knocking some of these regional guys out dead? I mean, he's got too long of a tapology history for me to really like analyze this too much. But God, I mean, he had 44 fights before he debuted. That's insane. And when you're looking at the dates, I mean, in some of these cases, he's fighting like a month after. So that's insane. But anyway, if we are looking at his UFC run, we're looking at a loss to Culibao, which has not aged very well. I mean, Culibao is not awful, but, he's not like a contender by any means. And then you're looking at, okay, beats Sean Soriano, he's not in the UFC anymore. Beats TJ Brown, he's not in the UFC anymore. Controversial win against Derek Minner, which ended up turning into like, the big controversy around their coach who was betting on or giving intel on people to bet. And I think that, he went in there with an injury and took a dive. And then he got chinned by Steve Garcia, who's the future GOAT of the featherweight division. No, I'm just kidding, but Steve Garcia is a dog. And then, we're matching this up with the UFC run of Costa, right? And it's like he decides to take on Thiago Moises in an all-Brazil matchup in the UFC event that was in Brazil, where Hill dog-walked Teixeira, as he so humbly put it. And then, he loses to Moises. I mean, he looked all right in that fight. And then he beats Austin Lingo, and then he gets knocked out by Steve Garcia. So this is really like the battle to determine the belt. It's like Steve Garcia's son championship event. That was whatever, pretty disrespectful, but I mean, it is what it is. So I'm gonna go with Costa. And I know that this isn't like a controversial pick, but it's like, you like when you can jump in here and you can pick a dog. But I mean, what do I have to go off of? I just have to, the matches that they've gone on, and I like that Austin Lingo win a lot more than either of, Shaidenbekov's wins. I mean, granted, he's coming off 2 losses, but it's like, what? He's lost to Nate Landwehr, and then, so sometimes all you're able to do is the combination of MMA math and seeing how do they look, and I don't think Nurmagomedov is going to, where is he going to be better than him? I think that Costa is one of those guys on the feet who doesn't have crazy knockout potential, but he knows what he's doing, and despite the fact that he got submitted by Thiago Moises, I mean, that's Moises' bread and butter, is the BJJ. He looked like he could hold his own on the ground. So I'm going to go with him. I don't have the most confidence in this pick, but that is my pick for this fight. So moving on, we have Jekka Sarigai, or Saragai. I think it's Jekka Saragai versus Weston Wilson. So Jekka, he comes into the UFC, right? And he has his debut after winning the road to UFC, but how much stock do we have in this, right? I mean, we've seen a handful of guys come out of the road to UFC and it doesn't go well for them. So, he comes and fights Anshul Jubilee, which, at the time, and I don't know if I'm being hypercritical, right? But at the time, that felt like an okay loss because it felt like, Jubilee is an undefeated guy coming out of India who seems to be like the best prospect that, I mean, obviously he's the best prospect that's come out so far, but like a very exciting, and obviously there's regions where the UFC is trying to make a push, and so they love to see it, but man, I mean, that guy just absolutely folding like a lawn chair. like that rickety lawn chair that your grandpa kept in the shed, and then, you're going to the beach, and they say, I got some chairs, and you're like, do we really have to use that one? That's what Mike Breeden did to him. And it's like, did he just gas out? And I know, like, what the focus on this isn't on Jubilee, but I'm saying, like, he loses to Jubilee, and I think that that's a bad look. But he has a weird knockout against Lucas Alexander, where Alexander slipped, and he's getting up, and Sargai just comes in and boom, catches him right on the chin. It was a very sick knockout. And, so, like, do I have all of the faith in the world in Jekka? Not quite, because I think that Jubilee loss is a little bit suspect, and it's just, how much did we really learn from that Alexander? Like, it was a minute and a half into the first. But we got to talk about Weston Wilson. Weston Wilson, to me, is one of these guys who's, like, adept at jiu-jitsu, and I mean, he's pretty much submission or bust, right? And I know that he's got a couple of KO, but, like, sometimes you look at someone's record, right? And you see, oh, okay, like, the KOs, like, they're a KO guy. But then you go and you look at their Tapology and you realize that, oh, okay, they were knocking people out who were like 1-2, 8-12, 2-3. You move on from the point that he's actually starting to fight in regional scenes that have, some people who have, some credentials. And his only path to victory seems to be that he's going to take you to the ground, and that he's going to take your back, and he's going to submit you. Or he's got a couple guillotine chokes, in the silly Goose Club, Silly Gilly Club, along with Dustin Poirier. God, that sounded fucking gay just saying that. Anyway, sorry, YouTube admin. Anyway, moving along. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Jekka here. I don't see Jekka shooting in on a dumb double leg and getting guillotined. I just don't think that that's what's going to happen here. And at the same time, I don't think that, Jekka is just going to get dominated in the grappling department. I think he's got heavy hands. And if there's one thing that we learned from, his fight with Lucas Alexander, albeit it was only a minute and a half, we learned that if he smells blood, he's going to go in for the finish. And that he can recognize situations where a finish is there and capitalize. So, yeah, I got Jekka. I mean, and this is an interesting one here. We got Carly Judas versus Gabriela Fernandez. What am I going to do? Am I going to go with the 3-1 Carly Judas? Or am I going to go with the 8-1 Gabby Fernandez? So I'm going through and I'm making picks on every single fight on the card, but sometimes with the UFC, it's just like, what the fuck are we doing here? This is a regional. This is a Dana White's Contender Series fight. I would like to watch it then so I could know something about them, and then I could tell you, but like, I mean, she lost her Contender Series fight, split decision, with some controversy, thinking that maybe she should have won that fight. I remember that was the narrative going off of that fight, and I believe I watched that fight. And then she's going up against, again, Gabriela Fernandez, who is 0-2 in the UFC on her run so far, against Jazz Divisius and Bleda. And I mean, when you're watching, women's MMA, especially when you're looking at a division like the flyweight division, right? It's like, it's rare to see women carrying this ability to be able to just finish a fight at any point in time. And if I don't believe that you possess the ability to do that, and you're just losing unanimous, and it's like these are 30-27s that she's losing. So I'm going to go with Carly Judas here, because I think that Judas despite the fact that she's coming off that split decision loss in the Contender Series. She's a little bit younger. She's got 2 inches worth of reach. And I think that she's going to win a unanimous decision. I haven't seen anything from Fernandez to suggest that there's like some potential that's left to be, tapped into. I think that, she was having some success on the regional scene, and then, just getting up to a point where she's fighting real competition. And I don't know if Carly Judas is at that level, but I'm willing to take the risk, and we're going to find out. Again, I wish this was like a Contender Series bout, but Fernandez is already in the UFC, and they're struggling to find flyweights off the regional scene who are going to be competitive. So anyway, give me Carly Judas by unanimous decision. Moving forward, we have Nate Maness versus Jimmy Flick. So I might be crazy for thinking this, right? I very well might be. And I think that if you want to be competitive with making these picks, you need to take risks from time to time. And I understand why everybody is looking at, Maness, and why they're thinking to themselves, well, in his very last fight, right, in his very last bout that he had, he was going up against a guy who, in Mateus Mendonca, who, was just completely going for broke, going for heel hooks. And Maness just pounded him out. Pause. But, Maness just, he showed why that doesn't really work in high-level MMA, because, like, in high-level jiu-jitsu, yes. And, I mean, I do jiu-jitsu. I'm a blue belt, and, like, yes, I understand. Like, it's the trend of jiu-jitsu is moving more toward this, like, leg lock game as a means of really damaging people. And it's a really, like, if you end up getting your ACL torn, people will be more likely to tap because it is a very dangerous technique. However, if you're getting punched in the face in the meanwhile, like, the likelihood of you going out before you're able to especially against these guys who are keen to it, why? And I'm saying all this because people would think to themselves, well, Jimmy Flick is a jiu-jitsu guy, and so Jimmy Flick is going to run into the same problem, right? Well, here's what I think. I think that Maness was a huge underdog when he did that to Mendonca, but Mendonca, he's on a 3-fight skid now. He hasn't won a fight in the UFC. So I think that win is being overrated a little bit. I think that was very low-level MMA by Mendonca. And I understand why somebody would be saying, Chase, you're crazy and wanting to go with Jimmy Flick, because Jimmy Flick had a long layoff, and then he came back and he looked really bad. He lost to Charles Johnson and Alessandro Costa, and things were not looking good for him until he, ended up making a comeback against Malcolm Gordon. But I'll tell you, it's like, okay, but who are we talking about here? We're talking about Charles Johnson, right, who only is really losing to the most high-level guys in the flyweight division. He just beat Azat Maxim and Jake Hadley. So that loss is, it's not like unforgivable, right? And then who else did he lose to? Dude, Alessandro Costa, whose only 2 losses are to Amir Albazi and Steve Urseg. He just had a crazy performance against Kevin Borjas. So it's like, I'm not really willing to write off Jimmy Flick. I think that, dude, he's just got this knack for finding the back and finishing these guys. And Maness has shown that he is, vulnerable to chokes. Going looking at his Tapology right now, he's got 3 submission losses, and he gets standing gillied by Tagir, right? But then beyond that, he's also been one submission loss, standing gillied. But either way, even if it's like Umar, where it's like, he gets his back taken and he just his defense is, let me just lay there until the end of the round. He's a huge flyweight, and I think that makes his likelihood to gas out higher. And my prediction for the fight is that it's not looking good for Jimmy Flick, and then he Jimmy Flicks his way into a submission victory. So he's a big underdog in this bout. I think he's like a 4-1 type dog on the line. Again, I'm not focusing on the line here. Okay, no, he's plus 310. So 3-1 dog. Give me Jimmy Flick for my first underdog pick of the card. Moving forward, right? We got Tagir Ulanbekov versus Joshua Van. So I think that sometimes we run into these step ups in competition is what I like to refer to it as. It's just a general term for like when somebody has looked good against who they should look good against, and people like to say fraud check. I'm not saying Joshua Van is a fraud. I'm just saying that this is a massive step up in competition at looking at Tagir. And I feel like for some reason Tagir lost a lot, and I mean a lot of stock. And it's like, I understand, like he's in this Dagestan, crop of guys who have very lofty expectations everybody has of their career. And it feels as though like people really wanted to write him off after that Tim Elliott loss. But it's like, you look at his last two fights, Nate Maness and Cody Durden, like in the Maness fight, people were giving Maness a shot, and I mean, he had nothing. He had first round guillotine, standing guillotine, had nothing. And Cody Durden is an adept grappler. That is one of his strong suits. And Cody Durden, going into that fight, was rocking a nice little tidy 4-fight win streak after losing to Makayev. And our guy, Jimmy Flick. And so I think that Tagir is one of those guys who, because he's so long for the division, he's going to be able to tie Joshua Van up, maybe get him near the cage, get a body lock, trip him down to the ground. I don't know if he's going to submit Van. I mean, Van has been submitted before on the regional scene versus a guy named Devin Jackson, who currently holds a 3-2 MMA record. So sometimes I think that these guys might just have an off day, and that happens. But it's like, if that guy can do it, and if, Felipe Bunez in their last fight was able to take him down on more than one occasion, I think that he's really going to struggle. And I think that a lot of one thing that these Dagestan guys don't get credit for is, like, yeah, they're not, they don't have a Yair Rodriguez level of stand-up game, right? Nobody's arguing that. But, like, they're very defensively sound. So I don't think that Van's just going to be able to start teeing off on him. I think that, Van is going to have to close the distance, and in doing so, he's going to open up the opportunity for Tagir to be able to implement his grappling, and I see Tagir winning a decision here. So that's my pick. Moving on to the main card, we have Adam Fugget versus Josh Quinlan. Now, I know that it's been rough for Quinlan, right? It really has. Because, he's coming into the UFC, and, it's rare that you see these guys coming into the UFC with, like, 4 professional fights. Or 5 professional fights, right? But smokes, these guys on the regional scene, finishing them all. I mean, he's finished all of his wins. And then he ends up popping, which, it always draws into question, like, was that giving him an edge on the regional scene, or is that going to is the lack of sauce going to show itself? Was it really just a mistake? It's just, you don't really know until you see a big sample size of fights. And then he comes off and, he has that really cool moment where he knocks Jason Witt out, which it's like, join the club, everybody has, but where, he's holds his hand up and he's gonna come down, but then he stops and is a nice little moment of grace, right? And so, you're thinking to yourself, maybe the sauce really didn't help him, and, this was just a mistake, and then he drops 2 bad losses, but it's I think those losses are going to age like wine. I think that Trey Waters is, dude, bro is 6'5" at welterweight with a 77-inch reach. He's going to give anyone trouble. And, again, his nickname, The Truth, I think it's fitting. I think Trey Waters is the real deal, but even more so, guys. Left hand to God, I think that Danny Barlow is going to be a problem, because what Danny Barlow did he's got a confirmed fight against Uros Medic. Can't wait to see that one. But what I'm getting at is that I think that a lot of people are probably trying to jump off the Bushido Josh Kinlan train, but I will stay on it, because I think that when you're looking at a matchup like Adam Fugit and Josh Kinlan, and I'm trying to, I got 2 guys who've both had 2 losses to good guys, and so you can't really play MMA math here, and you need to look at it then and say, well, when I've seen them, what have I seen? And it's in the wins that I've seen both of them have, and where I've seen them show what they can do, I see a far more athletic and powerful Josh Kinlan. And I think that if his kryptonite is literally what he fought, somebody who's just way taller than him is going to give him problems, and then somebody like Barlow who's just I think that Barlow is he's going to have a Jamal Hill type run where he's just knocking dudes out. And I'm making that call now, that I think that he's a very, very, very talented prospect. But all we have to go off of here is the skill set that we've been presented. And I think that Kinlan, was it fueled from his PEDs or not? He looks way more athletic. I think the danger factor is there, and I see him getting that done. So moving on, we have Asu Almabayev versus Jose Johnson. Jose Johnson had a very impressive win against Jack Cartwright in his Contender Series. I remember watching that fight and thinking to myself, whoa, this guy, he's the epitome of records are for DJs. He's coming into that fight with 7 losses, but I think that, he's got something to offer. Man, and then Damon Blackshear fucking gets him with a twister. And he becomes one of the only twister submission losses, and it's that doesn't look good. And then he beats Chad Anheliger, which isn't impressive at all. So we're left to understand, that this guy, and I'm looking at his topology, his last 3 losses are to Ronnie Lawrence, Mana Martinez, and Damon Blackshear. And someone might say to themselves, well, those are good fighters. But it's I haven't seen him beat anybody impressive, I've just seen him beat who he's supposed to beat. And Asu Almabayev looks legit. Very, very legit. I don't see... And it's and you're looking at his... And his... At one point, he was 4-0 going up against 5-0 Tagir Ulanbekov. This guy's been fighting very solid competition. When you're going up against a guy who's really tall and you play that suffocating grappling game, I mean, I see this as an easy dub, a very easy dub for Almabayev. And I could understand the temptation to look at Jose Johnson because he's a 6 foot tall flyweight, but it's like, this isn't the type of fight where I think that that's going to give him an edge. I really don't. So I'm going to go Asu Almabayev by rear naked choke submission. Moving along the fight card, we have Garrett Armfield versus Brady Hiestand. Dude, Garrett Armfield had one of those, really impressive performances against Brad Katona back in January in Canada. That was a real gutsy performance that he had. He showed that there were multiple, that was one of those fights that makes you think of a really competitive college basketball game during March Madness, where there's ebbs and there's flows, but you need to win rounds. So it's the one thing that I really love to see is he was so aware of his current standing in the round, meaning am I winning the round? And at every moment where it felt like it was going to turn in Katona's favor, he just did more damage. And we all just saw what Katona did in his most recent fight against Jesse Butler. I mean, absolutely manhandled him. And, he had that really sick performance for the, he had that really sick performance against, what was his name? Cody Gibson for the finals of the Ultimate Fighter season. McGregor versus Chandler. And so, I think that my stock in Garrett Armfield has never been higher. And it's am I to believe that Brady Hiestand is going to defeat him? No. Hiestand is, a pretty solid fighter, but it's bro, you're losing to Chad Anheliger and you're losing to Ricky Tercios. And we literally just saw that, Ricky Tercios is not, that whole season of The Ultimate Fighter was just a complete and utter waste of all of our lives. Nobody is going to come out of that and do anything. This current season with Valentina and Alexa Grasso seems to have some very interesting prospects. So I'd like to see that narrative change. But, yeah, I don't really see, how's Brady going to out-damage him? And I don't think Brady is going to be able to suffocate him with the grappling if Brad Katona couldn't. Armfield, even if he gets taken down, he's not one of these guys that's just going to settle. He's going to fight. He's going to get wrist control. He's going to get a whizzer. He's going to make his way up. And he's going to get back to the feet. And then he's going to make you pay with body shots. And so I think that my most comfortable pick of the entire card is Garrett Armfield. Anyway, so moving along here, we've got Lucas Almeida versus Timmy Kuwamba. And, I'll just make this one quick. I'm going with Timmy Kuwamba. I think that Almeida is one of these guys who, had a sick debut, but it's it was against Michael Trezano. You know what I mean? Dude, he's off doing BKFC now. He's not in the UFC anymore. And other than that, you're getting finished by Pat Sabatini. It's forgivable, I suppose, but then the Andre Fili first round, it's dude, if you lost a unanimous decision to Andre Fili, it would be one thing. Getting knocked out in the first round by Andre Fili is just not a good look. And, Kuwamba, despite the fact that, and dude, he lost, but it's it's a split decision, and this Aki guy had a lot of hype, and he went up a weight class to fight that guy. I think that, Kuwamba is at that perfect age where he's not like these 20-year-old guys making a debut. He's 25, so he's young, but he's got experience. And I almost think that coming in and losing your first fight up a weight class by split decision, that's going to light a fire under him. And I just don't see, I think that Almeida might show some flashes of brilliance, but in the end, I'm going with Kuwamba by second round finish. TKO. Moving forward, the new co-main event, because Ikram Aliskerov gets pulled off to fight Bobby Knuckles, which I'm not even going to go into this because it's just insane to me that getting chinned by Chimaev basically gets you enough clout to get a Bobby Knuckles main event, main card fight in Saudi Arabia. But anyway, we got Miles Johns versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. This is a tough one because Miles Johns, you lose to Mario Bautista, right? And you beat Kevin Natividad, you beat Anderson Dos Santos. But, like, dude, the one that I really don't like is that he loses to John Castaneda. I don't think that loss ages well at all, you know? I really don't. I think that he's beat guys who are so beatable. And I know that it scares me personally to go with a 38-year-old. I made this mistake in picking Edson Barboza versus Lerone Murphy. I mean, I wasn't doing these at the time, but then mentally that was my pick. And I lost a little bit of coin on that one. But anyway, it's hard to, like, put all your eggs in a 38-year-old's basket, but it's like, this guy, let's just go through his run. How about that? Let's just go through this guy's run, okay? Let's start in 2017. Okay, I know that this is 7 years ago, but let's recap his 30s real quick. Loss to Rob Font, beats Marlon Vera, loses to Piotr Jan, beats Henan Barao, loses to Lerone Murphy, and then he beats Perello, I don't even know who that is, beats Sergey Morozov, loses to Saeed Nurmagomedov, and beats Cody Stamann. I know that you're usually going to think of that last fight in your mind with the opponent, and you're going to think like, dude, Cody Stamann looked terrible in his most recent bout against Taylor Lapilus. But what you need to understand is that why I just ran through this with you is, dude, he's been doing his thing. And when he's been losing, right? He's been losing decisions. It was a corner stoppage against Jan. Okay, dude, that's when Jan was murdering people back in 2018. He was catching bodies. And, you know, I'm rocking with him. I'm rocking with Douglas Silva de Andrade. I really think that he's going to get it done. It will probably be a competitive fight because I think that Miles Johns is a gamer, but I just think that Silva de Andrade, he's going to generate more damage. I think he's going to have more activity. That's why he beats Stamann, is his activity level, even at his age, is still very high. And he's only been losing to, like, the highest level guys. I don't think Miles Johns is there. So Douglas Silva de Andrade by unanimous decision. But I think 29-28. To the main event, we have Tatsuro Taira versus, I don't know why I said that with a Spanish accent, against Alex Perez. So, I've been going back and forth on this, and I don't think I'm going to come to a verdict until the end of this video. As I'm talking through this with you guys, right? It is so tempting to take Perez. It's very tempting because, dude, all the canceled bouts really were the narrative, right? But sometimes that's not these guys' faults. And in that crazy fucking stretch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 canceled bouts, he loses to Figueiredo, who's doing his thing in bantamweight now. And then he loses to Pantoja, and then he loses to Makayev. He looked good against Makayev. I understand that, it was a absolute snooze fest of a fight. If there was any fight that should have went down during Pride Month, like Makayev. Dude, I grappled, I wrestled, jiu-jitsu, I understand how to appreciate high-level grappling, but when you somehow have the cardio to just shoot endless takedowns with your head in the middle and not be allowed to get kneed in the face, and you just stall and sit there in that position, it's pretty whack. And I think that Perez was looking good, when he had moments on the feet. Makayev had really nothing to offer. And then, we got to talk about that last performance against Mateus Nicolau. He comes out like a man possessed. And I get it. It's bro, I've dropped my last 4. I haven't won a fight since June 2020 against Jussier Formiga. I'm going after it. And it's been a great crescendo. It's been a great arc for Perez, but I just have this feeling that Nicolau is one of these guys who got absolutely chinned by Royval, and he's just chinny now because he shouldn't have went out from those shots that Perez hit him with. He looked okay leading up to the finishing sequence, but he just melted under Perez's pressure. And Tatsuro Taira is only 24, and this is a huge step up in competition. Going from Carlos Hernandez, Edgar Chairez, going from those guys and fighting Perez, make no mistake, that step up in competition factor I mentioned earlier, I think that that's too much sometimes. But when I break the fight down, what is Perez going to try to swarm Taira? He's very nice with his body lock, kind of trip takedowns, and he takes the back so well. And even if he ends up on bottom, he will probably sweep Perez. I just think that he's one of these guys who, he has the answer to anything that I could see Perez bringing. Is Perez going to implement his wrestling? No. Is Perez going to be able to get off enough offense without making himself susceptible to Taira's, body locks? No. And I think that Taira is going to get a late submission. So I'm going to go with Tatsuro Taira to maintain his perfect streak and get a submission victory in the 3rd or 4th round. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up my picks for the card. Be on the lookout tomorrow for a little short video that I'll drop giving my 5 best bets for the card tomorrow. If you like the content, like and subscribe. And I hope that, there's some exciting fights. I know that there's been a lot of crazy drama going on with all these, fights falling out and Pereira carrying the UFC on his back. I'm very excited to talk about these fights in the next few weeks. So take it easy, guys. Peace.